I wish you could see it right now. We are scattered all over the globe for InGoal Radio, the podcast presented by The Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, source for sports. Langley, Darren Millard in the Las Vegas Valley, David Hutchison in his vehicle in the Lower Mainland, and Kevin Woodley is about to go swimming with sharks as he comes to us for poolside in Hawaii. This is our most dramatic setting in a while. Hutch, you okay in that vehicle?
The holiday edition. I'm doing great. I'm in the mobile recording studio. It's fantastic. Spending a little time over in Vancouver on the holiday. And as it is all the time, our schedules aren't easy to coordinate, so I happen to be in the car, so let's do it. I've been wandering around Vancouver looking for the strongest Wi-Fi signal I could find. I think I finally have a sweet one, so let's get her done, boys.
Woody,
yes.
Poolside or ocean? I know which one's safer. Be careful over there.
Well, I would have been oceanside, but I needed to stay close enough to the hotel that the Wi-Fi sort of worked to get us through this session. As the owner of the business Zoom account here at InGoal, the one who logs in and can get more than 40 minutes. So, but I am. If I lift my computer up, let's just say you can see the ocean. It is Mele Kalikimaka, boys. It's beautiful down here.
Hang 10. That's my coming back. It's not as fancy as yours, but I just hang 10. Hey, you got to hang out with Thatcher Demko recently for a pro reads.
Yeah. Hey, if you're not an InGoal Premium member, no better time to join. We've talked a lot over the past couple of weeks about the value of pro reads, the value, whether you're a young kid or a beer leaguer or an aspiring junior goaltender or even another pro or another pro coach. There's no better way. They all tell us there's no better way to learn to read the game than by watching video and listening in as NHLers do it. And so, the only downside here is the reason we got mid-season time with Thatcher as much as we did is because he's rehabbing from a lower body injury and he's going to be a little while. But the bonus for goalies all over the world is they now get to sit in on a video session with him. So, first of many, we spent a good 40 minutes with Thatcher, and I got to say, obviously I've spent a lot of time with Thatcher over the past couple of years since he's been with the Vancouver Canucks, just in that locker room on a daily basis, practices, games, morning skates, but it never really broken things down to this degree, and I came away very impressed at the way he reads the game. There are a lot of sort of elements in there that are very unique that we haven't really necessarily heard before. There are times where he's not necessarily looking for the most dangerous player. He's looking for the most dangerous pockets on the ice. I thought that was really interesting. It's something that he comes back to several times during his pro read segment. So if you've ever wanted to sit in on a video session with an NHL goaltender, there's no better place to do it than InGoalMag.com with an InGoal Premium subscription. And we're really excited to bring you a whole bunch of pro reads videos with Thatcher Demko, along with the dozens plus other goalies that we've done sessions with. If you buy a membership now, you get almost 3 years of archives now, Hutch, like 150 different pro reads with different goalies, and a full year coming over the next year. And obviously, like I said, that's going to include a lot of Thatcher Demko. And we've got some other big names amongst the sort of young up-and-coming crop that'll join us here in the next couple of months, and we'll add them to the repertoire as well.
Hutch sounds like a great gift for the new year.
It sounds like a great gift. I love the first Thatcher Demko pro read that we got up. One of the things I like is Woody often sort of brings his perspective and to try and pull more out of these guys. And this week's play, he said, are you trying to play it this way, which is a very conventional way that a lot of coaches talk about? And he says, yeah, no, I actually don't believe in doing that. And here's why. And I think getting those new perspectives from guys is fantastic. So yeah, great opportunity. You can still send a gift. The gift subscriptions are still coming in. We've had a fantastic year. People wanting to share the gift of goaltending with loved ones, with students. Goalie coaches are buying them for some students as a thank you for working with them. I've seen parents buy them for goalie coaches. And if you do, you're sending them a year subscription. As Woody said, you get the full archives of InGoalMag.com, which is over 650 articles and videos published now. If you're interested, but you haven't really checked it out yet, if you head over there, there's multiple links that will take you to sort of why subscribe or the benefits of subscribing. And there's a great page that lays it all out there for you, including links to 10 or 12 unlocked articles. So you can see a pro read, you can see a pro drill, you can get a feel for what all those 650 articles look like. And then I'm sure that you will see the $36, $37 American is a fantastic deal. And really, we've underpriced ourselves, but we want to do our best to help out during these times. So grab your subscriptions now, guys, and let's get talking about this great episode.
I just want to start this statement by saying I have a great life, but I am incredibly envious of you two right now because Hutch, bear with me. You got to go to the hockey shop in person, and
I did.
Woody, you got to, on our feature interview this week, brought to you by Sensorina, catch up with Andrew Hammond. Just to rub it in a little bit by explaining and give us Cole's notes on both those things. Start with you, Woody, on Hammond, and then I want to know all about the hockey shop, Hutch.
Well, the Hamburglar, Andrew Hammond, it's ironic. I knew the retirement had happened and that it was going to be announced, and it's for a not very goalie-friendly reason that I knew this, and we'd sort of arranged this interview for once he made it official. I actually reached out to Andrew as part of a feature story on Ovechkin and his pursuit of.
That was a great story
of sort of second place all time in chasing Gretzky. And I was trying to talk to the milestone goalies, and Andrew gave up Ovechkin's 500th goal. And so I sent an email, to be honest, not expecting to hear back from Andrew. I'd heard back from other guys on the list. James Reimer was 300. Funny enough, James Reimer didn't remember that it was a milestone, but he remembered the goal exactly. It was the first time he'd faced Ovechkin. Anyway, so I reached out to all these guys. I thought Andrew was in Russia. I remember reading that he'd signed in Russia. I didn't realize he'd only played a couple of games and come home. So he caught me up sort of on that the retirement was coming. And then as soon as he made it official, reached out the next day and we had the interview set up. So Andrew's a guy that we talked about getting on the podcast several times before, especially his last sort of season of pro when he was with Montreal, he came through town. And that was when he had just kind of had the ankle injury and his game looked really good. And I thought things were every time, let's be like, and we get into this in the interview, and I don't want to give it all away, but every time that guy got a chance in the NHL, almost every time, he posted good numbers. So that's one of the conversations we had here. And he was doing that at the time of the ankle injury. And that, to me, that's sort of what must be a little bittersweet, although he's fully accepted it, is the fact his game looks so good and then the injury and he never fully recovered and now he's retired. But a great interview, obviously, about the amazing run he had with the Ottawa Senators, one of the greatest of all time. The Hamburg, pretty much everything Andrew Hammond and his career, but a lot of stuff that I don't think a lot of people know about as well, is packed into this interview. It was a really good one. He's really gracious with his time, and there are a lot of takeaways for goalies.
I can't wait for people to hear about it, and I'm looking forward to the lowdown on walking into that brand new space over at the hockey shop.
Oh, it's so exciting. Got over there 2 days ago. I've been in Vancouver for about a week and got a chance to stop by there on the way to the rink. And it was hopping, guys. It's I think it was the 27th, so we're into Boxing Week. The big hockey shop sale is on, and the place is filled. I've never seen that many people in the hockey shop before in the old location, and the new one feels like it's about 5 times the size of the old location. It feels like you've walked into this giant open concept space, everything brand new, everything beautifully designed. It's sort of like a candy store for hockey. You just look around and you want to touch and grab and feel and play with everything that you see in the shop. And you can just see the energy and you can feel the energy. And of course, wandered around, saw all the great stuff in the different sections there, the new shooting lanes and so on. But of course, had to go spend time in Cam's Corner. Oh, maybe that's the new name for it. Checked out Cam's Corner. Got to play with some of the gear. Little Hutch tried on a bunch of chesties to see what might be next for him. And we got to talk to a few people around there about goaltending, and Cam obviously spent a good deal of time with him. Checked out those new Warrior sticks, the ones that we had. I think it was the last episode, wasn't it, with the contoured shaft? And those were exciting. Would love to try one of those. Just the chance to get in there and talk goaltending with people and try everything new. So exciting. Check out the hockey shop in Langley, folks, if you get a chance, if you're in the neighborhood. And if not, obviously go online and you can find the Boxing Day sale on there. There's so many great savings for you still at the Hockey Shop. Check it out.
The gear segment this week is dealing with the True 20.2 Offshore line.
Yeah, there's kind of a lot of people again will be like, "Hey, haven't you guys done the True 20.2 line?" And we have, but this is different. There's a lot of inventory in, and that's the thing. I actually shouldn't say it's different. It's just that all of a sudden there's a whole bunch in there, and it's stock gear. But people wonder why. Hey, well, like, why are we all of a sudden got all this stock? Much like the 12.2, and the reason is because True, which is not unexpected, has got manufacturing overseas now. And so there's going to be differentiation between the lines. And so instead of built by Lefevre, it's designed by Lefevre. And this is something we've seen with other companies, and it's not a big deal, but it's just sort of Cam wanting to be upfront about why there's all this inventory. Let people know that there's all, if you've been waiting for True 20.2, a line that was difficult to get, he's now got it in stock. And so we should also have the new PX3 line. Will be coming soon at the Hockey Shop and thehockeyshop.com. So look for that in the coming weeks. But in the meantime, he got this fresh shipment of 20.2. So we wanted to sort of go over the features of that line, what differentiates it from 12.2 and what we're expecting from PX3. And really interesting, when PX3 comes out, I'll tell you a story about Freddie Anderson's role behind developing it and the thinner thigh rise. Because when Freddie was here, this is like right down to taking video of pucks coming off his pads and sending it to them for running changes in the line. So we've got the True 20.2 Offshore line available now at the Hockey Shop and thehockeyshop.com. And we joined Cam, sat down to talk about it. What's different? And I think for a lot of people, the key is what's not different with this new line available now. Welcome back to the Hockey Shop, source for sports. We're at the new location in Langley. I guess pretty soon I don't have to, it's just going to be the location.
You know, I think we're getting pretty close to
we're coming up on a month. This is just it.
It's more than a month.
It's more than a month. Time flies when you're having fun, as they say, Cam. And in 34,000 square feet of hockey awesomeness, we are having fun. Here in the corner, we call Goalie Utopia. I think I'm sticking with it, mainly because I can't remember any new words, and it just rolls off the tongue after all these years. We have, and some of you are going to be looking at us right now going, boys, you already did the 20.2. What are you doing? Does Woodley get hit in the head with another puck?
Well, he did.
He did, but that's beside the point. This is different.
Yes.
Much like we talked about with the 12.2, you've got first of all, you have stock in.
Yeah, we do.
You have inventory.
We got colors.
And one of the reasons that you're starting to see the inventory pop up is that True has opened its offshore factory. They're producing gear offshore as well as domestically.
Correct.
And for everyone that screams like, why, this is the reality. In order to meet the demands, you needed to add offshore capacity. That's what they've done. And I'm telling you, when I look at these pads, 20.2, the 12.2 we did before, it really is hard to tell the difference between this, which says designed by Lefevre, and the ones that are actually made in Canada, made by Lefevre. So, Cam, walk me through, for those that don't remember, we've done the 12.2, both domestic and offshore. This is now the 20.2 domestic. Some of the highlights of this pad, and we'll get into the blocker and glove really quick, but just some of the highlights and what they get in the offshore line designed by Lefevre.
I don't know if you can hear that, but they've included their Fast Glide material on the slide surface of the pad. So worth calling out right off the bat. In terms of for an upgrade, in terms for your overall sliding and feel wise, very, very similar to Speed Skin. It's not Speed Skin. It's different. However, you are going to see it on all of their stock pads, with the exception of, I think it was black actually, because I don't think they have black Fast Glide. It only comes in white. So the black pad doesn't have it on it. Just heads up.
Worth noting. Flip it over. Let's see the back.
Overall, back of the pad.
So see that, you're flipping it over. The people up from the moon.
Well, I've got it, so I can be able to do that.
Okay, there we go.
And open it up. Jump on the gun here a little bit. Okay, so we still see their FRS system. The exact same as what you would find on their domestic pad.
That's a lot of Velcro.
That is a lot of Velcro,
but with a lot of Velcro comes a lot of adjustability.
Exactly. It allows you to dial in your fit specifically to what you are looking for. Sure grip knee cradle, great for especially that sock knee pad combination. Make sure again you're having that stable landing surface.
And of course you can run that knee strap down to the cap if you want. The outer flap on the knee is just sort of Not
Laced in.
stitching. Laced is the word I'm
Laced
looking for
in.
there. So easily removable. Just undo the
Exactly.
laces and you can take it off if you prefer to wear it that way. Little padding to help stabilize your butterfly down under the shin area. We see the flat
open boot.
open
Soft.
boot, flat. Get that pad to sit up high. You see Matt Murray wearing his 20.2s in the NHL. See how high that sits on his skate.
Correct.
Helps with that.
Stiff. Let's reiterate the whole stiffness profile, though. So the boot's
She's-
soft, fantastic. The pad itself, though, we are very, very, very stiff.
If you want flex, that's 12.2. If you want
Correct.
stiff, that's 20.2. And of course, we've got PX3 coming soon. We'll have that in store and sharing that story with you as well. But right now, it's the 20.2 made offshore. We've been through the pad. I think we've got all the highlights. Oh, let's.
Yeah, get whipped in the face by the pro laces.
And the pro laces are worth calling out. I like that they have the
our
one
hybrid series.
the hybrid series with the lead on it, because to me, elastic all the way to the toe is problematic. We've talked about it before.
All stock +2 sizing, worth noting as well.
So 33+2 fits. How does it fit with that
bigger.
sitting high? So it fits a little bigger just because it sits up high on the boot.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
if you were, say, a 34 in CCM, what might you be looking at a 33 here?
Correct. Again, depends on what pad you are in. But again, if you're coming from, say, like an E-Flex pad or something like that, you probably want to go down in size versus. So if you're 34 in E-Flex, you want to be like a 33 here, for example.
Okay, they have a couple different models of the blocker. This is the 595. The bindingless blocker comes stock with the 20.2. Neutral hand position, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm not going to reiterate that a blocker's a blocker, but we've seen this blocker before because it's the exact same as all the other true blockers that are on the wall. Not too much of a change here.
Gloves. We saw the 12.2 offshore series came with a stock 600. This is a stock.
Game ready, 590. Great closure right out of the box. I mean, this is like a brand new glove. Kevin's closing it no problem. So
And I have weak little hands.
yeah, he's got weak little hands. So you heard it here, folks. So if you want to check him out, you can give us a call at 604-589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790. We got the colors in stock. We got sizes in stock. Come check them out.
True. Designed by Lefevre. 20.2. Available now at the Hockey Shop, Source for Sports.
I love that. What's not different is as important as what's different, because it's the same line. It's just made at a different spot. Well done. Give it to the Freddie Anderson tidbit.
Well, I was going to save it for PX3, but basically, Freddie for years has worn his pad shorter than sort of his max. Like, he hasn't had it all the way up to his max regulation NHL size. And that's because he likes, when he drops into the butterfly, they close. Like in a perfect butterfly, the tops of the pads, even when they're shorter, close, and he feels more mobile in the shorter pads. He feels like when he drops in longer pads, the tops will hit each other and interfere with each other. And so we went shorter. But of course, in the NHL world, we don't always drop into a perfect butterfly. Or sometimes we drop a knee and move laterally. And so you're costing yourself coverage. So there was a cognizant effort, perhaps pushed by goalie coaching staff, to see if we can get back up and add that extra inch and a bit on each side of the pads for a little extra coverage. Well, how do you do that without having the pads interfere? You need them to be thinner at the top of the thigh rise. And so when we see the PX3 line, if you've seen it online, if you see it, on social media, and we'll have it, like I said, at the Hockey Shop soon, you'll notice that there's that thinner upper thigh rise. But the first versions of it, thin meant floppy. And so he felt like pucks were hitting it, and it was like the trap door. It was hitting the top of the thigh rise, and it was bending back and allowing pucks to get through. So he actually took a video camera out and had pucks shot off the pads, and he was filming to see that, how much that top of the thigh rise was flexing. And so then the next iteration, and the one that you'll see available at launch, they reinforced the top of it, I believe, with a layer or layers of carbon fiber to make it that much stiffer. So Freddie Anderson very much playing an active role, it seems, at least from conversations with him and when he came through with Carolina, in what we see as a finished product of the true PX3 pad.
Bit of a lesson there, guys, for when people are out shopping. I think most of the companies in their new products have dealt with this, but if you're shopping for something used, or even if you're looking new, if your desire is to have the lightest pad possible, one of the only ways you can go lighter is to go with a foam that is not as stiff and strong and is a little bit more flexible. So you grab the top of that pad. If you found something super, super light, it might be a little bit too flexible. So especially in some of the older stuff. If you go and buy it, just understand that there is a trade-off when you're going for the lightest pad possible.
Freddie's got a little Ed Belfour, Ryan Miller going on with taking gear to a next level and researching it. Woody?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Yeah, he's definitely a guy who likes things to feel a certain way, and I like that. I like that he knows what he wants out of his equipment, and he's willing to make adjustments to it or have his manufacturers make adjustments to it to get it there. I mean, when he was in the Bauer pads, there were sets there. He wanted it to be a little shorter than what his max size was, and I think there was a set there that actually got shipped out and sort of, for lack of a better term, cut down at the top of the thigh rise and then stitched back up so nobody could tell. So I love that he understands why his gear works and how it works for him. I think there are a lot of people that wonder why you'd ever reduce the height of your pads, but I'll never forget being in the Maple Leafs dressing room and him doing carpet flies and showing me how, hey, like, it doesn't matter. Like, look at my butterfly. When I drop, the pads seal perfectly. I don't need the extra size. And he just felt that much more comfortable going to the ice with a slightly shorter pad.
Carpet flies. I've not heard that before. Is that a language with the kids these days, Hutch?
I don't know. I've heard that one before. It's something you try over in the hockey shop when you're trying on your gear. So you just gotta go with it, Darren. Got to be a cool dude now.
We need Cam to get some carpet in there. It's all beautiful hardwood now, so he needs a section just for carpet flies. But actually, believe me,
now they're woody flies.
There's some. Ooh, I like that. There's some really good stuff coming in terms of being able to see yourself dropping to the ice and what your profile is in the net coming very soon to the hockey shop location out there in Langley. They're working on it. It's going to be neat when it comes. You'll be able to see yourself and take photos of yourself in your gear in a net to see how you look and how much of it you fill up. It's a pretty cool concept by Cam, but it's in the works.
That reminds me of something.
What?
You're not sure, Darren?
I thought you guys were coming here for the road trip. Now I might be coming up there.
Well, that would be nice. No, the chance to see how you fill the net and take up space. How else can you do that?
Go down Sense Arena.
Sense Arena, absolutely. One of those great features of Sense Arena is that you can take a look at yourself after plays and see exactly how you're filling the net, exactly how you made a particular save. They've even got a feature that allows you to mess around and they tell you how well you're filling the space. They actually give you a number to talk about how your box control is working. Really cool. I don't know if you guys knew, there's a new Sense Arena out.
What?
There is a new release of Sense Arena out. Just came out. Just got the notice maybe a week or 10 days ago. And finally, the NHL and PHF shooters are in Sense Arena. So if you want to get in there and face real NHL, real PHF, pro guys, pro girls, you can do that now. And what an awesome feature that they've added in there. But, so of course, everybody's super excited about that. Why wouldn't you? The other thing that's new, one, if you already have the Oculus headset, you can get on there and do a 7-day trial with Sense Arena before you have to make any commitment to pay. So there's a chance to get in there and give it a go. If you've been worried about making the commitment, now's your chance. They also have an intro version available. So if you want to get in there, you can get a subset of the drills. You can get all the cognitive drills. You can get some training stuff for only $29 a month. So it's not the full package. I don't think you get the video drills, but if you're not sure about making a full commitment and you already have the Oculus headset, maybe Santa left one under the tree, $29 a month, great chance to try out Sense Arena and see what it's really like before you make that full $49 a month commitment. For the full package, all the drills, the NHL shooters, the PHF shooters. We think it's one of the best training tools out there, Darren. Now it's gotten even better. And that's one of the great things about Sense Arena. There's new releases coming all the time. Oh, and I almost forgot. Now, if you're in the big arena in Sense Arena doing your training, it's a full house filled with fans cheering for you. Pretty cool experience.
Do they boo you if you let it in? Like, can you get like the full out Bronx cheer experience too? I've been in Hawaii, so I haven't had a chance to test this out. I wasn't going to risk my Oculus by bringing it down here. It would have been some cool background shots of people looking at me, even
beach shots.
Yeah, people would have been looking at me pretty weird if I was stopping pucks on the beach. But Will they boo you? And second, so you're telling me I can face NHL shooters without having to risk the loss of a tooth?
Exactly. You can get scored on in the comfort of your own home, Woody.
Well, I mean, that happens anyways with the old version, but didn't take NHL shooters to do that.
Not many people get that opportunity. Andrew Hammond did. He has since just recently retired, but this is a player that will forever be linked to the Ottawa Senators. And in 15 years, they're going to have alumni back, and he is going to still receive the loudest cheer, and that'll be in comparison to some of the franchise all-time greats because of that run that Andrew Hammond had.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, and we talk about it, we get into it. We get into the card from McDonald's. We get into what it was like being in that zone. All kinds of great stuff from, what is arguably one of the greatest runs in NHL history over that sample. Just incredible, the run he came on. But there's so much more to the Andrew Hammond story, and that's why we wanted to have him on as a guest. Like, this is a guy who, playing junior in the BCHL, wasn't even sure he would get a college scholarship. Forget pro hockey. And then when he did get to college, he chose a program on purpose. He'll tell you why. That when he got there, looked like it might be its last year because it gave him an opportunity to play. And as college was winding down, the idea of pro hockey wasn't necessary. Like, he didn't know there'd be pro opportunities. And then he goes on this run. But as usual, it's not lucky. It's not a straight path. It's all about hard work. It's about perfecting your craft. It's about finding, different voices, there's just so much to the Andrew Hammond story. Beyond that incredible run. That's why we wanted to make sure we had him on the podcast so we could get into all those different elements, and he did not disappoint.
Another chapter in the Andrew Hammond story. Our feature interview brought to you by Sensorina VR.
Really excited to welcome to the InGoal Radio podcast for the first time. I tried to make it happen a few times over the years, but the schedules never aligned. I kind of wish it was under different circumstances, but we talked a little bit last week, and it sounds like you're at peace with the decision. Andrew Hammond, fresh off the retirement announcement, maybe just for starters, there's so many places I want to take this, but for starters, just catch us up. Everybody saw the announcement on Twitter, talked about the ankle and the injury and trying it out this year. Just sort of give us the rundown on where the body's at and what ultimately led you to this decision at this point.
So I think now being in this position, it's a lot different for me. I always kind of had maybe a little bit of a fear in the back of my head that whenever I was done, what would the body look like if it was a bad knee injury or something? Because nothing's really guaranteed about how you're going to kind of walk away from the game. And obviously for me, I had the injury when I was with Montreal last year. It happened in the game in Calgary where my ankle got twisted, kind of where they drill the pegs in for the posts. My escape blade, I went down in a reverse and the toe of my blade got stuck under the post. So felt a pop. And ever since then, I've seen a number of doctors. I've gotten surgery. I've done rehab. I've really, I guess, the wit's end of options. But with that said, my day-to-day life and quality of life is great. It's really just unable to do a butterfly, which in the modern day game is a little bit of an issue, but maybe if I was playing in the 80s or something, I could still get away with it. But yeah, it's just something I've battled for a little while. And the one thing I found, everyone plays through bumps and bruises and injuries and stuff, but I think it had just become too much where as much as I was trying to will it to happen, I guess what I was producing on the ice wasn't making it worth it anymore.
Frustrating to go through that process in terms of the ankle injury. And maybe is it more so because when I talked to you in Montreal, when you came through with Montreal, you were just starting to rehab. And we talked a little bit just informally in the hallway, like really liked where your game was at, really liked where things looked like they were headed for you. And it looked like you were really comfortable with your game. Does it make it more frustrating because you had, you were back in the NHL and it looked like playing really well?
Yeah, to an extent. I felt like for a long time, my game was, there's a variety of reasons, but I always felt like my game was a little bit more suited to the NHL. Maybe it's because I felt like I had a good book on a lot of players, understand understood what they wanted to do. And I think a lot of how I read the game and things like that maybe helped a little bit more, where in the American Hockey League, it's players from all over, and a lot of people that maybe you haven't heard of before or know what kind of player they are. And basically people might as well not have a name bar or number on the back, because when you're in the middle of the game, you don't really know. But when number 8 on the Washington Capitals is coming down, you know exactly who that is. So it was a little bit different. You understand tendencies maybe a little bit more, but I think also just how fast the game is it's just so reactive, and you're not trying to look too far ahead, and you're just trying to, I guess, give yourself a chance.
Interesting you say that, and certainly not the first time I've heard it over the years from goalies. As much as people from the outside, it sounds absurd to them, especially for guys who read the game so well. The NHL in some ways, maybe easier is the wrong term, just better suits their style a little bit. It sounds like that was your experience. The AHL can be a little more scrambly and unpredictable.
Well, I think what you have to remember too is everyone in the NHL, they're the best players in the world. If you think the game of hockey at a fairly high level and understand what the right play is, you can usually bank on those players making the right play. Where the American Hockey League, there's a ton of great players, but there's a lot of younger players who are still learning that. And I always felt like part of my play in the NHL was based around, well, what would the smartest play be in this situation? And you can read it off players, whether it's off 2-on-1 or 3-on-2 or whatever. You can kind of figure out where the puck will probably end up, because they're 9 times out of 10 going to make the right play.
Yeah, and it's interesting how that works. Reading the game as a skill set, because it's something we talk a lot at InGoal. We have our pro reads that we try and sort of help kids with that process. Where does it come from for you? Is it just experience and innate, or were there things you did to develop that, whether it was video, or was there a way that you became so confident in the way you read the game at the highest level?
I'd say there's a couple turning points for me. When you look back at my game throughout college and junior, where I was a lot more aggressive on those kind of, say it's a point shot and you're scrambling to find the rebound and stuff. I was always finding myself going out towards the puck. And Rick Wamsley, my first year in Ottawa, really reinforced the concept of protecting the net. And that's basically just, in some ways it could be interpreted as angle before depth. For others, it's just trying to get to the middle of your net, whether that's on the goal line and being deep. You're better off there than being 3 feet outside your crease and the guy passes it back door. You're not going to give yourself a chance. So although you would like to be out taking down the angle at all times, there's certain instances where it's good to just kind of try and protect that net and get to the middle, because especially at the higher levels, guys have virtually no time with the puck on their stick. They're just firing it. Are they better at putting it into corners? Yes, but I would say, again, probably 80% of the time, they're just going to shoot it towards the net and hope that it finds a corner or something, but there's a good chance that it might just hit you in the stomach or something as well.
That aggression that you mentioned playing with in college, and of course Bowling Green University, 4 years there, after playing in the BCHL here in our backyard, the InGoal backyard, for a couple of, I guess, 3 seasons. Was that just a function of, because I'm thinking like it's not that long ago, and yet NCAA hockey was a little different back then. I think it's become a little more NHL-like to a certain extent, but it was a little more of a one-shot league at times. You could be aggressive. We saw a lot of goalies have to make those adjustments coming over from college to pro.
I think as much as it maybe doesn't have the speed that the pro game does, the way teams defend and forecheck, I mean, you basically have someone on you at all times there. And whether it's the atmospheres in some of the buildings where it feels like guys are all over you or the fans are all over you, it feels like the ice is a little bit smaller. And with the college, I don't know if I would call it a one-save league, but it feels like guys truly defend as hard as they can. And it could be a product of you're playing 36 games, maybe 40 games a year. You have more energy and you're younger and all that stuff. But it's definitely a different game, and you just don't have as much time and space as you do, especially in the NHL, where there's some guys on the half wall, they want you to go right at them. And in college, every time you're taught to go right after the guy, whereas in the pro level, you're taught sometimes, if it's Patrick Kane, just let him hang out there. He can't do anything from there. Or a guy behind the net, they can't score from back there. But in college, it's a lot more get on your guy as quick as possible.
Let's rewind it a little bit, because we started with, obviously I want to catch up on the retirement announcement, but I want to go back to where it started for you. Like how did Andrew Hammond How did you become a goaltender?
So like most Canadian kids, at least on the West Coast, the driveway was kind of where it started. But my first real memory was the '94 Cup run with the Canucks and Kirk McLean. I still remember the Jeff Brown to Pavel Bure for the breakaway winning goal. And that's kind of my first memory. But after that, I was the youngest kid on the cul-de-sac and older brother, older kids in the neighborhood. And as the youngest, I got forced kind of between the pipes then. And between those two things, it kind of created this desire to be a goalie. And like any young kid, you find an idol in different shapes and forms. Some kids it's Superman. For me, it was all the goalies coming through. And I think I went to one Canucks practice at the old Britannia. I don't even know if it's still called there, but it was the same thing where it just seemed like the coolest thing ever to me. And the weird part is that I never really was a full-time goalie until I think 12 or 13. I bounced around between the two, but the semi-am and minor hockey where I played, they stopped providing gear for the goalies right around age 12, age 13. And that's when my parents said that I had to make a decision, one or the other. They weren't going to buy both sets of gear. And I chose goalie, and that's kind of when I started playing rep hockey and all that stuff. And everything else since then has kind of just happened in unique, different ways. And I guess what would be the conventional path for a lot of people.
Well, it usually starts, it's one of two things, right? It's either the older brother and you got to go in net, or it's the gear, like an obsession with one of the, like those are the two most common origin stories we hear.
I was a big gearhead when I was younger. I forget, there was a forum and message boards. It might have been the old Miller hockey website or something where they talked about all the new gear, and I was all over that as a kid. And my first set of pads, I still remember that I had owned was the Coho 570s, and I slept in them that night. And I woke up, I think 2 or 3 in the morning. I couldn't feel my legs because they were just stiff as a brick. But that's all the funny stuff. And I think that like the purchase from my parents' side of things, they realized how much that meant to me that I'm sleeping in them the first night I get them. So it was, I don't know if it was the gear or the play, but something definitely chose me rather than me choosing goalie.
Well, I think, I'm trying to think of I think it's the Goalie Store bulletin board was probably the one you were on.
I think it was.
And ironically, I don't think it exists anymore, but it was started by Paul Fricker, who was one of the local coaches here, who now coaches the Vancouver Giants as a goalie coach.
Wow. Yeah, no, I wore Miller growing up, so that would make sense. And they used to have I don't know if it was the store or factory or both out of, it used to be called Great Pacific Forum, I think, back then, but I don't know, right under the Alex Fraser.
Yep, and that's where I still play beer league, so it's still there. Now it's funny you mentioned playing out, and 12 or 13 being a later age, and interestingly enough, it is. And yet we've heard from a lot of guys that those early years, maybe not being too goalie specific, looking back on it can be a benefit. Do you feel that way a little bit? The fact that, especially when we talk about reading the game, that you played as a forward, you played as you were out, and sort of the patterns that everyone tries to connect as a goaltender, you were part of them.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it. And then also, I mean, one of the big hot topics these days are kids playing different sports. I played soccer, I played baseball, and I think all of that's super important. And I would say more important than being goalie specific at a young age, but particularly being a defenseman or forward in minor hockey and learning basic skating and how to think the game at some level. Obviously it's different and changes as you get up or get older, but I would always play roller hockey with my friends after school, never in net. And it was always one of those things where you're kind of, I mean, I would say the one drill that I have found most effective in my career, especially when things are going south and the net feels like it's a soccer net, is just putting dog leashes kind of on the corners of the net to reinstill how small the net is. And for me, that's something that kind of dials back in. This job can seem really hard at times, but at the end of the day, there's not really much room where they can beat you. And as I talk about being a forward or defenseman, you kind of learn those situations where when you're certain places on the ice, there's only certain spots where you can beat the goalie and that type of thing. And all of that you kind of learn without even really thinking about it. And then when you're on the flip side and you're in that, you kind of start processing that. Well, I've been in that position. I know he can't really shoot here or shoot there. It's got to go here. And that all kind of fits into that reading the game type of thing.
Oh, I love that. And now I got to ask, because I'm curious, first time the dog leashes came out, like where did you have that initial exposure to that?
I'm trying to remember specifically. I can't exactly, but I would. It would have either had to been, I think, Pasco Valana would have brought them out at some point, or we used to do a pro goalie camp in Madison, Wisconsin,
With
and,
Mike
and one of those guys,
Mike Valley,
yeah,
and that
Mike
group.
Valley, and a lot of other guys. It may have been there, but the 1 year I was in Rochester, we got back into it a little bit, and it's honestly mind-boggling. I think they're not as cheap as they should be, but I think they're probably $30 or so, and you get the retractable ones, and you can basically pull them right to where the puck is, and you can see all the trajectory, everything as far as where you can be beat. And if you're no deeper, no further out than just the top of the crease, you maybe have 3 inches on either side of your blocker or glove, and you just realize how small the net is. And I think that, combined with one practice in the American League, Rick Walmsley told me just not to go down and watch how many pucks I stop. And between those two things, it kind of clicks in your head. You want to make the job so hard, but really it's not as difficult as you think when you're just facing a shot square on. And oftentimes when either it's goalies dropping too early or something along those lines, that you can actually make it much harder on yourself than it needs to be.
Well, I was curious about the dog leashes just because obviously we talk now a lot about, like, the Swedes talk about it in terms of box control. Mm-hmm. But I've run into goalies over the years that learned it in different ways at different times, and some of them quite early. I remember Connor Hellebuck saying when he was a kid, they used to have, the mini nets, USA Hockey's mini nets, and they would put those out in front of them. But at the end of the day, however you learned it, whenever you learned it, I think you're right. Like, we tend to think of this giant 6x4 behind us, and the reality, in order to get into it, it has to beat us through a much smaller area out in front. And that concept can be tough for goalies to feel. It sounds like you found a way to feel it and remember it.
Yeah, and that goes back a little bit to, there's so many different ways it gets taught. I've heard belly button over puck or nose over puck and different things. And as long as you're centered on the puck or centered on your ankle and all that, it goes both ways. Because if you've ever shot on a goalie, you think, oh man, there's no room. But then when you're on the other side of it and you're standing in front of the net, you're like, this guy's got a lot of room to shoot at. So it kind of blends those two concepts where it makes you meet in the middle a little bit. But I think box control is great for young goalies just to understand the concept. And goes back to what I said with Bowling Green, how I used to chase out and think I had to go get stuff. But the more you sit back, you realize there's really not that much room when you're kind of just more protecting the net a little bit.
So we talked a little bit about Bowling Green, and I want to go back to the Vernon Vipers days. By the way, Curtis Lazar says hello, a teammate in Ottawa. We'll get to that in a bit, but he remembers you as a guy who grew up in the Okanagan. He remembers watching you when you were a member of the Vernon Vipers. What was your experience like? We talk about goalie coaches and evolution. Starting as a full-time goalie at 12 or 13 here in semi-AM minor hockey, where did goalie coaching, where did that side of the thing enter the equation for you? Did you have one in Vernon at the time and into Bowling Green? Was that something where there were different voices helping you take these strides as a goaltender, or was it maybe not until you turned pro? Because I know, we're talking about an era where not every team had a goalie coach like they do today.
Yeah, no, it's the transition has been great to see. But no, it wasn't always like this. And back with Vernon, I started with the Surrey Eagles, and that didn't really work out. And I'd kind of been at a crossroads in my hockey career before that. And I had kind of sat down with Pasco and Sean Murray and talked to them a little bit about what I wanted to do with my hockey career if this was it. And they were two people who they'd run semi-AM minor hockey goalie schools back as young as when I was, I think, 8 or 9, and I was borrowing the gear. And I remember Sean telling me, well, he didn't tell me, but he had basically inferred to my mom that it might not be worth my time almost because I was so bad. So it's funny because we stuck together, and both of them I worked with all throughout minor hockey and junior and everything. And even when I was at Bowling Green, I'd go back home in the summers and see them and work with them. But the Vernon thing, where there was a goalie coach there, Sean Mathiel, who was an ex-pro, and we worked on a lot of different things. He changed some things in my game. And that summer before my last year was I had made a decision where if I wasn't going to get a scholarship, it wasn't because I wasn't prepared. And that's kind of been the one piece of advice, or the thing I've leaned on the most throughout my whole career, is just how important preparation is. But yeah, I know there's been goalie coaches. I'm going kind of all over the place right now, but there's been goalie coaches all over. And at Bowling Green, we had guys helping out all the time. And My first year pro, though, Rick Wamsley was the only goalie coach in the whole Ottawa organization. And that's changed now where basically every team in the American League and NHL, as you know, they kind of have two guys. But back then it was, you work with him maybe once a month your first year. He'd come down for a week, be gone with Ottawa for 3 weeks. And that's kind of how that worked the first year.
You mentioned preparation, and it sounds like there's a good lesson there. Can you expand on a little bit? Because I mean, the one thing with this podcast is we get a lot of like parents and kids listening, often together. Yeah. We hear a lot on the way to the rink. They listen to it together. So, you know, for that young kid that feels like they want to make sure they're giving this their best at this point, what did preparation entail for you at that age and heading into junior and in the transition to college? What did making sure you were prepared mean compared to maybe what you were doing before?
So for me, what the preparation meant was, that year going in my last year of the BCHL, my only goal was really to get a scholarship. Was we had a good team. We wanted to win the World Bank Cup. We wanted to win the BCHL. We had lofty goals. I knew if I were showing up every day and I was thinking, oh, why don't I have a scholarship? Why don't I have a scholarship? And all this, it would wear on me. It would take away from my play. So my only goal that year was to win the RBC and get into the playoffs and play really well. And I figured if I did that, the rest would kind of take care of itself. So for me, it was just work habits and practice. I guess diet and fitness and all that stuff. That was something that I hadn't really taken an understanding of until that point. And then even as we got closer and we did reach that goal of eventually winning, and throughout that, the other goal kind of took care of itself. But I'll fast forward a little bit in that, where it was when I was starting before the run in Ottawa, I had every reason to not have confidence going in and all that. But for the previous month before I started, every day at practice, I'd be the first guy on and last guy off. I'd be in the gym. I'd be doing everything. So at that point, when it actually became my turn or my opportunity, I had the confidence and self-belief built in that, you know what, whether this goes well, it goes bad, I've done everything I can to this point to put myself in the best position going forward. And when you do that, you have the opportunity to give yourself all the confidence in the world. But no coach, no teammate can give you confidence. It's really just something a goalie has to find themselves. And for me, that's how I find confidence, and how I found confidence throughout my career was preparation. And whether that's in between games or whatever, because there's certain times where you just know I've done everything since last game to get ready to play well, or different things like that. But for me, that's what preparation was putting myself in a good position to know that I could have success.
We hear that a lot in academics, right? Like you're not nervous about a test.
Exactly.
If you know you're prepared for it.
If you've studied, it's a lot different than if you show up and you haven't studied or something like that. It's the exact same concept. And honestly, I think it's so overlooked sometimes. It's just how much you could truly give yourself confidence by doing the right things.
Well, you mentioned that final season with Vernon and the Royal Bank Cup. You guys win it, 2-0 shutout in the final, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you're correct.
And had the scholarship been locked up at that point, or walk me through, was college, and you said it was a goal. Did you go into that tournament by the end knowing you had it locked up, or were you still waiting? Because that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. It's kind of a funny story. So,
well, we like those.
Yeah. So I think it was maybe January-ish. And at the time, one of the assistant coaches at Bowling Green was Dennis Williams, who's now the head coach of the Canadian World Junior team this year. So, he was on a scouting trip, and we just happened to play the Swedish under 17 or under 18 team in an exhibition game on a Tuesday night. And I think his flight got delayed or something, so he came and watched the game. I played half the game. And from that point on, I was kind of on the radar a little bit. I think maybe a month later, they'd offered me a scholarship, and I committed on a Sunday. And Monday afternoon, Bowling Green announced they were getting rid of the program. So I had about 12 hours where I was super happy that I got the scholarship, and then they said that they're getting rid of the program. So a little nerve-wracking. I had talked to some other schools, but ultimately Bowling Green, I guess, upped their offer a little bit and gave me a little bit more of a scholarship. And the silver lining for me was that I was going to be given an opportunity my freshman year to play. And I knew that if things did go south with the school, I could at least transfer to another school without losing a year of eligibility or sitting out. given the situation they were in. The great news is the program got back on steady footing and alumni rallied around, and it's in better shape than it ever was back then. And now they're doing a lot better.
Now, as you go through your 4 years at Bowling Green, and I know some of that, I was trying to do my math in my head on whether some of the guys I know that obviously we had Kevin Bieksa here with the Canucks, a proud alumni. I think of Jordan Sigalet, and even the social media legend Kane Van Gate was once a third goaltender at Bowling Green. But I couldn't quite do the math in my head whether that all coincided with your time there. One thing I do know beyond your game and the evolution of it, I know that as much as like the nickname started at Bowling Green. Can you walk me through the origins of that? And like, obviously it became a huge thing in Ottawa. Was it something you liked, minded, hated when it first started? Or because obviously it goes, the roots of it are stealing games and something you did a lot at Bowling Green.
Yeah. Well, not my first year. That's a different story. But no, my first year, I think the team won 4 or 5 games. I won 0. And then,
but I'm guessing if they announced they were canceling the program, that there were probably quite a few departures, and maybe that first year team was not quite up to snuff.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, Dennis Williams, the coach, is I think he was 28 at the time as the head coach. So I think that shows where we were at, and great everything. He's gone on and had a heck of a coaching career now. But yeah, I think I was 12-2, and they still started me the first game of playoffs. So I think that spoke to where the team was at and their chances. But it's where the nickname started. My first year playing rebound, I'm sure everyone knows that game. And one of the guys basically just started joking like the burglar kind of thing. And then some guy was like the Hamburglar. And then the next year we're coming up with a design for my mask, and someone's like, you should put it on your helmet. But the first year pro, I had it on my helmet too, and no one noticed. So it wasn't until that's not something I was ever really called in the locker room. It was more just a funny thing to put on the helmet. And then when the run in Ottawa started, that's really the first, and since then, I guess the time that the Hamburglar was what became famous.
Okay, and so how the opportunity presents itself in Ottawa sounds like late in your final season at Bowling Green. Like, was pro hockey, you talked about the final year of junior A, and wanting NCAA to be a goal. At what point does pro hockey become something that's serious for you and a serious consideration?
My second year, I had gotten shoulder surgery, but I was supposed to go to rookie camp with the Capitals. And then my junior year, my third year, I went to Blackhawks development camp. And that was kind of the first time that I'd started thinking maybe. I remember I had a good camp at the Blackhawks, but I was older. I didn't finish school until 25. So I didn't really think anything was realistic. But my junior year, this is the story in hindsight. At the time, I didn't know any of this. And I told my agent at the time, whatever happens, don't keep me in the loop. We'll just figure it out at the end. Kind of like how I said with the Royal Bank Cup and those other things. If I'm doing the right things with the team, those other things will take care of itself. And we had played a game in the CCHA semifinals against Michigan, and we had a similar team to my first year, so we weren't great. But I think I had 62 or 63 saves or something, and Pierre Dorion was there watching and scouting, and he took note of me, and I didn't know anything about them having interest. And senior year, we're playing in Lake State, old hotel. You got to crack the windows open in the middle of winter because your room's 100 degrees. And I hear this guy talking outside on his cell phone outside on the street. And I can tell he's talking about some players and talking about an agent. He's mentioning, I think it was like Colin Greening and Jesse or Brad Winchester. I forget the 2 free agent signings that Ottawa had. And they were talking about 2 Lake State players. And I tell the goalie partner on my team, we shared rooms then, I told him about what was going on. And oh, that's interesting. He knew because his dad was at the game the previous weekend that Ottawa had basically their whole staff there watching me and all this stuff, and that they were there watching me again. So I had no idea that they were actually talking about me.
You were just oblivious.
Yeah, I was just oblivious. And then we lose the next round to Notre Dame and kids program, so I won't go into the whole story, but we thought our hockey careers could be over. I didn't know ECHL, AHL, Southern Pro League, NHL. I truly had no idea. I had talked to, I think, one team in person that year. It wasn't Ottawa. And then, my agent called me the next day and basically said, here's the deal. And I honestly couldn't believe it.
Is there a lesson there? Like you talked about, the ability to sort of block everything out and not be having those conversations in a position that has enough pressure on it just by the nature of the position to allow you to focus on doing your job and letting everything else take care of itself. If you knew they were there, if you knew they were all watching, would that have just added unnecessary pressure?
It could have. One thing I think might be good for young goaltenders, that I became OCD about it almost. Like during a game, I'm basically repeating this phrase in my head at all times, and it's next shot, next save, next stop. So it was my way of staying in the moment and worrying about the next shot and not worrying about whether it was a bad goal I just let and a big save. And I think that kind of lends itself to becoming more of an even keel goalie. And then also if distractions were happening in the rink or you knew someone was there or anything like that, it allowed you to kind of move your focus from the one area back to where it should be, and that's on the puck and the next shot, the next save, and hopefully the next stop.
Well, it's interesting because next shot, next save is a mentality that all goalies strive for. I always make the comparison to golf, right? Like that ability to stay in the moment is as soon as we're in the past or looking at the future, we're in trouble. But it's the easiest thing to say and the hardest thing to do quite often. It sounds like maybe one way to do it is just not stop saying it.
Yeah, and you honestly, as I said, I became OCD about it. I think, I love golf. I think there's so many similarities between goaltending and golf, and all of a sudden one day you're seemingly slicing it for no reason. It's the same thing. All of a sudden you're not catching something clean. It feels like everything's the exact same, but for whatever reason, it's just a little bit different. The more advanced you get in the game, you're able to figure out how to get back to, I guess, your base or the normal things. And I remember I was watching a game back in Hockey in Canada a while ago, and I think it was Dwayne Rollison said, for NHL goalies, it's not really a technical thing. You kind of know how to get back to your baseline. It's all about just feeling good. And I think that's the same thing with pro golfers too. It's not a whole lot different. And I think if you can build a base and a structure within your game as a young goalie, always being able to kind of go back to it when things aren't going well, it really helps.
What was yours? What were the things that you went back to? What was the foundational piece for you? If things started to drift, what did you come back to first? You talked about it, the dog leashes is one in certain drills. What was the, beyond next, because some guys, you said next shot, next save. Some guys also have mantras about posture or positioning that they try and it'll change over time. But what was that foundation that you came back to?
Off the top of my head, I honestly can't remember everything. I used to, as simple as having a note thing on my phone that I would just look at, and it was kind of, I would say, half visualization and half just kind of keeping my mind dialed into the right things. But usually it was toes on crease line, eyes first, feet second. One thing I kind of got into later in my career that became, I think, helpful for me was trying to keep my head on the same plane. And what I mean by that is if you picture the crossbar, it's whatever relation your head is to the crossbar, it basically stays there, whether you're dropping, moving laterally or whatever. And the reason for that was that if you've ever played catch with a football or anything like that, it's pretty easy to catch the ball when you're standing still, but as soon as you start jumping, it becomes a little bit more difficult. It's the same thing with the first baseman. And as I said, I played other sports, and you get taught to kind of get set before the ball gets to you at first base. And part of that is because it's easier to track the ball. And so the more tracking became something people talked about, I don't know if I was even necessarily taught it, but it was just something that I kind of put the two different ideas together and thought, okay, well, this makes more sense. And the more I focused on that, it felt like tracking pucks became a lot easier.
What was the first couple of years of pro? What was the biggest adjustment for you? You talked about, working with Whammer and some of the, in terms of positioning and things like that. You got a stint in the first year. I think, if I remember correctly, it was Craig Anderson's second child, which This is obviously
Yeah,
a while.
I don't remember what it was. I just remember Leonard was the guy who started, and it was against the Wings. And as I've said a few times this week, talking to different people, but if that would have been the only time I played, it would have been great. But no, it was my first game pro, Norfolk in the American League, and they had 3 5-on-3 goals in the first period. It was 4-0 after the first, and I was out of there. So that was a warm welcome to the American League. But
hey, welcome in, kid. 5-on-3 galore.
Yeah, 3 5-on-3 goals. So that was great. But no, it's actually very interesting to look back on. And I think if I've spoken to different goalie partners throughout the years that have been rookies in the American League and stuff. If you were to divide my stats between the start of the season and Christmas, and then from Christmas on, it was like an 880 save percentage the first half of the season, then like a 930 the second half. And all that was finding that adjustment. And like when I talked about at Bowling Green, how aggressive I would get, I finally started seeing those lessons that were being pushed on me as far as protecting it, being a little bit more patient, holding my feet. Once I started putting those lessons into action, that's when I started having success, and the game started seeming so much easier to me, and I had more time all of a sudden, and you're making saves that used to look hard, and now all of a sudden they look easy, and all of that stuff just started to kind of come together to me or for me, and I started playing more. I got in a rhythm, and I played a lot of games down the stretch, and the end of the second year, I moved into that summer feeling really good about my game and where I could take things.
Interesting you say that, because you talked about how well you read the game, and first half, second half, like statistically around the league for years, the first half of the season is looser defensively. It's why I keep seeing all this noise about save percentage being at a 15-year low at the quarter point this year. And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter what it is at the quarter point, because it always goes up as teams sort of, it's not like just about the defense getting better, but it becomes more predictable. Guys understand the system and they go where they're supposed to go. And I'm guessing as a goalie, especially one that relied or read the game so well, that might have maybe played a role in that.
No, I think that was a big part of it. And then also reading the game in college and reading the game in the pro level are two different beasts. And all of it was just an adjustment. And I think when you see a lot of fans sometimes get eager for the young goalie prospect to hurry up and play in the NHL and stuff. And I think there's so much value in developing at a slower rate. And ultimately, when they're ready, they're ready. And I mean, there's so many examples now throughout the last 10, 20 years of guys that played 3 years in the American League, or guys that played half a season and right into the NHL and all that stuff. And there's varying levels of success with both. And I think it really just kind of depends on the goalie itself.
Okay, so flash forward to the run, obviously 14-15, you get that call up. Did you know you were going to stick? I mean, just because like it's a little more long term, like when you get that call, I think it was early February or mid-February, Lehner goes down. Did you know you were coming up for a long time? Like, did that help at all, or did you have no idea what you were coming up for?
Well, they had wanted to sign me back in December of that year to basically the same contract I was on, which was a two-way and all that stuff. And they weren't really happy with my play coming into Christmas and January. So I wasn't confident that I would be up. It was uncertainty on how long Craig would be out and all that stuff, but I didn't rule out them going and getting someone else or trading me somewhere else. So I really didn't know what was going to happen. And I basically just put my work boots on and my head down. And then, as I said, I tried being the first one on the ice and last one off. And if anyone wanted to do anything, whether it was one-timers from 10 feet away from me or whatever, I was the dumb young goalie who was willing to do anything. So that's kind of, I guess, my mindset leading into there. And then after a couple of weeks, it kind of, you start giving yourself confidence and you're making more saves in practice. And then once you get your first start, you feel like you're in a good spot.
The origins of that run, was that it just starts there? You had a good game, you feel good, and then it just snowballed from there? Were there things about your game at that point that you felt good about above others? Like, were things that were clicking that hadn't in a way before? Because we're talking about, and I mean, we are 40 minutes in, and I'm just getting to it. I didn't want to make this the focus, but we're talking about one of the greatest stretches for a goaltender in NHL history, like, and especially to start a career, like first chance to start and go on a run like that. It's historic stuff. So I'm curious if you remember what it was that was clicking, what it was that felt good that allowed you to stay one shot at a time for so long. At least it looked like that.
No, I think that was truly how it was for a while. And I think part of it was kind of things I touched on before, is having an idea of what my structure was. And a big part of that was not necessarily playing deeper, but just trying to give myself a chance on everything. And back then, my game wasn't the most technical and more acrobatic than anything, but which is funny too, because when you're in the moment, you think you're the most technical guy ever. And then you look at the video now, you're like, oh my God. But no, you get the base to your game and the structure. And the first game, I felt really good. I felt prepared. After that, I think the next two games were big for my confidence, because I think we played Buffalo and then Florida the next two games, and I didn't feel great. I kind of felt a little nervous that I didn't have in the first game against Montreal, and I had pretty good results in those two games. So I'm starting thinking to myself, well, if I'm playing this well and I don't feel good, if I can start feeling good, I could really do something now. And that was kind of my mindset. And then once we got to California, I get back-to-back shutouts against Anaheim and LA, and that was really kind of the turning point for me, where it was my oh wow moment. And that gave me the confidence going forward, where LA at the time, I think they had won the cup a year or two before, and they were one of the top teams in the league, and to shut them out and play as well as I did, that gave me a ton of confidence. And we kind of finished off the road trip that way, and next thing you know, we're back at home, and we're getting closer to a playoff spot, and I'm feeling really good about my game and relying on that structure, and the same stuff with the next shot, next save, next stop.
Was it hard to maintain that as the attention? I mean, player of the month in March, 10-1-1. You said shutting out they were the defending Stanley Cup champions. The Kings would have been that year. Playing in a Canadian market. Obviously, we know the hype that started around the nickname. That focus, like that spotlight that's around you in this moment with all that attention and what some people might consider pressure, because you said now you're in the playoff picture. How'd you manage to stay in the moment through that? Because it couldn't have been easy, especially first run, first chance.
Yeah, it was difficult at times, but honestly, like it's weird, and I think this is probably the same way for most guys playing in a Canadian market. Like, your most comfortable times are when you're at the rink. Like, you're not worried about going to a restaurant and someone coming up to you, or the restaurant. Like, when you're at the rink, you're just in your most comfortable kind of element with all guys that are just like you. And it felt like we were at the rink all the time then, which was great. But I was living in a hotel then, and that part was a little bit harder, because that meant going out to eat for dinner at restaurants all the time and all that stuff that I wasn't used to, I had to deal with. But as I said, when I got to the rink, that was my place of comfort, and all the other stuff that came along with it was stuff I didn't have control over. And I think once you start to accept that there's things in life that you have control over, and other things that truly you can't, I guess, change what happens, you get into a place of comfort in your life where it becomes easier to accept things that maybe you might feel pressure or just uncomfortable, and you just learn how to deal with it. And luckily at that point, I was a little bit older and had a little bit more maturity, where it wasn't the toughest thing for me.
The attention that came with it, and as I said, the Hamburglar, and as the nickname builds up steam and gets more attention, and there's hamburgers being chucked on the ice. You said uncomfortable. It was, I got the sense talking to Curtis today, it wasn't a spotlight that you wanted necessarily.
No, I mean, I never grew up playing hockey to play in the NHL so that I could be the face of McDonald's in Canada or something. So it wasn't like, it just wasn't something that was ever on my radar. And I mean, it's like anyone. Ultimately, you want to be remembered by, I guess, what you do on the ice. I think that ultimately is what happened, and I just happen to have a very unique nickname that is synonymous with all of that too now. But yeah, it was uncomfortable at times. the one thing that sticks out to me that I think really kind of bothered me a little bit, because I've always tried giving people the time of day if they're fans or something, was in Toronto, and you come off or out of the hotel, and I think there was honestly probably 40 or 50 people there, and they're all yelling my name for my autograph. I didn't even know there'd be people out there, and I have to be on the bus in a minute. So I'm like, I can't sign anything. And you start getting booed and you suck and all this stuff. And it's a lot easier getting booed and told you suck when you're wearing gear in the middle of an arena than when you're walking on a bus.
Oh man, yeah, that seems a little unfair. But hey, Leafs fans, right? What are they going to do?
Yeah.
The other part was, as you start that, you talk about preparation. You're slamming BioSteel right now to take care of your hydration while we do this interview. But it sounded like as those starts piled up, and the record was incredible, but I think people lose track of just how much you played in a very short period of time. And how'd you manage that physically? Because it sounds like that would take a toll. That would take a toll playing as often as you did during that stretch without the pressure. But even with the pressure, how'd you manage the body, and how did it feel by the end of that run?
To be honest, I mean, I wasn't the best in shape person when I left college, and that was a rude awakening to me when I first met with the Ottawa Senators representatives, and they had told me to lose X amount of weight and all this stuff. And I really dialed that stuff in, was in a really good spot, and I was just in really good shape. And the only thing that really bothered me throughout that run was my back had started hurting a little bit, and that's from the soft hotel bed I was sleeping in. And the team actually had paid for a brand new mattress to get delivered, because at that point I was the golden child and nothing could go wrong with me. And that was almost surreal too in itself, that I was in a hotel and they were getting a different mattress delivered. But for me, it was I don't know. I had a different approach than a lot of goalies. I'm more I lifted weights a lot more than other guys. I did all that stuff, and even before the games, I'd be swinging kettlebells and basically doing a mini workout, and that's just what made me feel good on the ice, and changed over the years a little bit. But at that point, I think I still had that young man's body where it didn't really matter what I did. I could kind of just show up and crack my knuckles and hop on the ice.
And it probably took that mentality a little bit too.
Yeah, and I mean, there's games where I felt awful. I was tired, and adrenaline takes over a little bit and all that stuff. And that's the other thing too. Like, I would be lying completely if I said that adrenaline didn't play a big part in that run. And as a kid who grew up a giant hockey fan, and you see it often where guys start their careers really well, there's so much excitement when you're going into new buildings and places you haven't played before, and whether it's playing Crosby for the first time, or Ovechkin, or all these other guys, or new buildings, or Hockey Night in Canada, it's so much easier for you to find reasons or excuses to get up for these games. Whereas the longer you get into your career, it just seems more monotonous, almost kind of like the same game. Oh, we're in Chicago on a Tuesday night, or whatever it might be. Chicago on a Tuesday night's great, but I don't want to get myself in hot water on any of the other cities that sometimes get mentioned.
What do you remember the last game? I think it was in Philly. And if I remember correctly, you guys got in late. Like, it wasn't clinched or locked up. Or the last game heading into the playoffs. What do you remember? What do you remember of the plane ride home?
So that was, if memory serves me correct, if we won, we were guaranteed to be in. If we lost, we needed help. It was more or less the same kind of game we had played throughout, opportunistic offense. And when that horn sounded, it was surreal, like a lot of other things during that period of time. But the plane ride, and this is something that you hear so much around locker rooms, is older players always say, you don't realize how fast it goes by and how precious moments like that are. And at the time, I didn't understand it either. But you look back and position where I'm at now, and that's truly a top three moment. And we landed in Ottawa. And I mean, the guys that are playing the league for 10, 12 years, they're saying this is one of the most fun seasons they've ever had. And you're thinking, oh, wow, like, I'm so lucky. This is my second year pro. And all of a sudden this is happening for me. But yeah, they had probably, 400 fans waiting at the airport. Like, it was truly surreal to get that I guess, arrival home and all that stuff. And then you're starting to wrap your head around the fact that you're going to be playing in the playoffs and living out a whole new dream.
I heard that they had a special item on the menu for that flight home too.
I don't remember that.
Oh.
That was news to me.
Laser told me there were hamburgers on the plane after. So,
yeah.
So it figures as the guy who's behind that and the guy who got so associated with it, you were the one that don't remember. So, what was the weirdest part of that? You mentioned the McDonald's things, and there were lots of stories written at the time. I don't remember half of them, but like the lifetime card or something like that. Probably comes in more handy once you had kids than it would as a professional athlete, I'm thinking.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit to that story. I was given, I think, 6 gift cards by the local franchisees, McDonald's, and that would more or less be a McFlurry on the way home from a game or something was the only real purpose for me. But I think I ended up, they only worked in Canada and we were living in the States, and I'd given them to some friends that lived in the Ottawa area, and I still have the gold McDonald's card in a frame that they had given me, but I don't know if that works or not. So that's to be determined. And honestly, it might never be determined if it works, but it looks nice on the wall, and it's a good talking piece, at least when people are over.
Sign a contract after that year, stick with Ottawa for a couple of years. When you have that type of high, like we see it even today, the game evolves constantly. If you're not always evolving as a goaltender, you're falling behind. You get that contract, you've got some security there, but walk me through, like, as things move forward, how did you continue to, what were some of the focal points as you continued to work on your game and continued to, try and stick in the league and develop?
Yeah, well, there's a couple parts that I felt pressure after the contract, and obviously I set lofty expectations for myself, and
it's kind of hard when your first full run is a 941. That's a pretty high standard to live up to, because I look, your next season, you're 914, which is a hell of a mark in this league.
Yeah, I think it was the exact same or 0.1 off from what Craig had that year. And I remember it was treated as if I had basically one of the worst seasons ever. So it was a combination of both, where I struggled with, we're a team that didn't make the playoffs that year. Was the goaltending part of that? Probably yes. There was, the wins and losses weren't there for me. As I said, save percentages and everything. I think a goalie should be ultimately judged by the wins and losses for the most part. But I thought I had a pretty good year, and it was disappointing for me because I'd kind of been dealing with some hip and groin stuff. And the next year I came in, and it was fairly obvious from the start that I wasn't in the team's plans. And we had new coaches that following year, and it happens. And just the way that whole season unfolded, where I was trying to kind of play through an injury, and then it just gets worse. I end up getting surgery and missed the whole year. And then all of a sudden it's just a little bit awkward kind of being a part of the organization, but you're both trying to kind of move on and move past.
And when you finally move on and into other organizations, now you start getting different voices. Now you start getting different coaches. That's something I talk to a lot of guys about. There's positives and negatives. Positives is sometimes you can get new ideas you haven't been introduced to before. The hard part is sometimes, knowing what your foundation is and making sure it doesn't get lost. What were some of your experiences, as you started to move on to other teams? And again, like Hockey DB doesn't say anything, but you get into a game with the Avalanche and you have a hell of a game. Like, every time you got a chance, it felt like to play at the NHL level, you played really, really well.
Yeah, and that was disappointing to me too. And I would agree with that. And I think I was always surprised as the years have gone on since then that I just never got another chance. And there was times where I was called up with Buffalo for a number of times and never got in, and various teams in Minnesota and stuff where it just never happened, or the stars didn't align in that way. But I always felt like when I played, I played pretty well outside of the one season when I was basically playing hurt. And I guess you could lump New Jersey last year into that as well. But
that was playing hurt too.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So I would say when I was healthy, I felt like I played pretty well. But it was eye opening when I got to Colorado. UC Parkila, the goalie coach, he's still there. I thought I worked hard. It's a whole nother thing with him, and he's great. He knows what he's talking about. Awesome goalie coach. And at the time, I think I had probably made a mistake in my career where after my first year, I felt like I I just had to keep doing what I had done. I felt like I had not figured it out, but what I was doing was working so well that first year that I would be silly to try and change things. And it's a fine line between changing things and evolving. And somewhere along the way, I probably lost my game a little bit there, but I learned a lot from him, and just kind of little details that maybe I hadn't got along the way before then.
And then on to Iowa. And I'm guessing, I was trying to do the math on who was where at that point, probably Freddie Chabot as a goaltending coach with the Wild.
Yep, I had Freddie Chabot my first year in Iowa, and then later on I did the full year taxi squad of Minnesota and all that, and then I was there the first half last year, and Richard Bachman was there with me last year.
What's that like some of the different voices, things that you were looking at, the games changing around you? Because like I said, like by the time I see you in Montreal, the games I had watched, I was like, everything looked really, you talk about looking back at that amazing run and seeing yourself as playing more reactionary. By the time I see you in Montreal and had watched some of those games and the success you were having, like there looked like there was I don't say more structure, because that, I don't want it to have negative connotations, but your game just looked really clean, and it looked like it had a good feel and structure to it. So obviously there's a path along there where you made some adjustments.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Colorado was big for that. I had never truly heard about the reverse VH or that whole thing until I got into Colorado, and I was a guy who always went pad on post when he would teach it, and that was strictly that's where my foot would land. It wasn't necessarily by design, but I felt like I could get more leverage coming off the post and everything. And we would work on it every day. We would be out there before practice, probably 30 to 40 minutes, all those goalies, and Varley and Bernier would be out there as well. And it didn't matter if they played the night before. I was kind of the third guy or backing up and kind of around, but not necessarily playing. And I got a lot of work with UC in there, and it's tough stuff, but that was kind of the start of me understanding that I needed a little bit more of a technical base to my game and couldn't just rely on trying to make saves just because I got my body in the way.
Well, and I was going to say probably like in terms of at least the post play and that type of modernizing of the post play, like Jonathan Bernier revolutionized his post play in that same window. Like I remember him going from Anaheim and watching him go into a post 4 different ways on 4 different plays. He really seemed to buy into, so you would have been learning it along with him under UC's watch. And what's it like is it nice when another guy's trying to learn the same thing?
No, absolutely. And it was, as I said before, it was eye-opening in how much work was involved you hear stories of Ian Clark and other goalie coaches who are under the belief that the goalie needs to be the hardest working player on the team. And UC would never talk about that, but it was kind of inferred with how much was expected of you each day. And sometimes it would feel crazy how much stuff we'd be doing, but I think the results spoke for themselves. The team got in the playoffs, and it was nice having a guy like Bernie and Varley too, who, I mean, when you're, I don't want to say going through hell, but you're going through a tough stretch, it's nice to have a guy who you can kind of talk to and go through it together.
I forgot to ask while you were in Ottawa, we talk about reading the game, and I'm not sure anybody reads releases like Andy does in the game today. Was there anything that he passed along that you, because I've talked to a lot of guys that were playing partners for him, and that's, whether it was Mike Condon or Robin Lehner sharing stories about how he read pucks off sticks. And in a lot of cases, it's like, hey, I can't do that. I can't play like that. But for some of them, there were things you could take away from it. What was that experience like for you?
It was, when you talk about making the game look easy, I don't know if there's a goaltender who the game's easier for him. He doesn't always make it look easy, but I truly find that I think the game is that easy for him. But there'd be times where I can't say with complete conviction, but I'm fairly certain that he would do shootouts where he wouldn't even look at the puck. He'd be looking at the guy's eyes, and because he would do that in practice all the time, and guys couldn't figure it out, and he'd just be standing there and make a glove save with his peripheral vision just because he was looking where the guy was shooting, and would either give him something and take it away or anything like that. And I've tried it; it doesn't work the same for me. So I
It's a bit of a lost art.
The secret, yeah, but it was honestly incredible when this guy's going to the net to do a shootout and he's not even looking at the puck and he's still making the saves.
So that last year, Montreal, as these things start to come together, these different things post play, and it's funny, like we talk so much about post play as goalies, and I think non-goalie people are like, why are they always so focused on it? But as the game in that 5-year window has become so much about plays going across the middle of the ice into the corners or out of the corners, it feels like as goalies, like the ability to move in and out of the post has never been more important.
No, absolutely, and I think the more I learned how to use the post as leverage, I felt like that was like my position of comfort. And I say that in the sense that if I'm sliding on a backdoor play and I'm sliding in front of the post, if it goes back the other way, it's pretty hard to get back there. But you're sliding to the post and the guy passes it back the same way it came from, it's a little bit easier to bump off that post and you're going to have more leverage and you can kind of use your momentum that you went into the post to push off, unless you're Matt Murray and you're knocking the net off. But no, I just find it can be a tool if you learn how to use it and you learn how to, I guess, generate your momentum in and out of it. It can be a great asset, and I think it's great the evolution that you see now, and I think it helps a lot of goaltenders.
Now, as like you said, things started great in Montreal, then the ankle injury, skate gets caught under the post, something goes pop, and just weren't able to sort of play with the same comfort from there on. As you kind of had to go through that stretch in New Jersey and head overseas this year to test it and it doesn't work, like what are some of the lasting memories for you? What are some of the, when you look back now at your career, what pops out first?
I would say like the playoff game in Montreal, the first one, and not even during the game necessarily, but skating out for warm-up, or not warm-ups, for the start of the game, and the towels are going crazy and all that stuff, and it's the stuff you see on TV that used to give you goosebumps watching on TV, and now you're living it out, and that was awesome. And then after kind of being out of the league for a little bit and getting the chance in Game 5 against Nashville, I think they were the President's Trophy winners and make 40-something saves and win Game 5. Like those, I think the playoffs are the ultimate test in this league, and to have success and get the opportunity, most importantly, to play in those situations. Those are probably the things I'm most grateful for. And then getting one last kick at the can to go back to Ottawa and play with Montreal last year there was awesome too.
And in terms of what you're up to now, did you consider, because you see the game so well, you sort of walk through a spectrum there where the game was changing and you changed with it. You've had all these different voices that you've worked with, from Pasco and Sean to a little more old school guy like Whammer to some modern coaches. Did you consider coaching? Was that ever a thought in the thought process? Like, was that something you thought about?
When I was playing, and you're always thinking, well, what am I going to do after type thing? That was always something I considered. I'm in a unique position where I've kind of got to experience every spot that a player in an organization might experience, whether it's being the guy for a little while, being the third or fourth guy in the American League up on a call up, or not playing for a while and all of a sudden you get put in a weird position. I'll say lucky. I've been lucky to live through that. I think I'm better for that, and I have a better appreciation for all the different roles throughout an organization. What I'm doing now, I'm working for BioSteel, and I get to still be around the rink and work with a lot of the equipment and strength and medical staffs, and I get to deal with them on a day-to-day basis. And I still feel like I'm around the game, and it doesn't feel that much different yet. But I'll never rule anything out down the road, and it's been I joke about being a suitcase to an extent, but the way I look at it is I've just been lucky to learn from so many different people and had so many different coaches, and I'd be lying if I didn't say that I've kind of stolen a little bit from everyone, and that's kind of helped shape my view on goaltending and hockey in general.
Well, I mean, whether it's on that side or the side you're in now, I think that the game's better because Andrew Hammond stays in it. So I'm glad you found a way to sort of stay around the game and involved in the game. Especially with all the different things, like you said, like you've got that background where regardless of what a young goalie is going through, you can probably speak to it directly. And I think there's a lot of value in that. So if you ever do decide to switch to the other side, I'm sure people will be interested. Can't thank you enough for spending so much time with us today. As I look over at the clock, I realize it's over an hour and I said I wouldn't be this long. And so I'm sort of famous for this, but I apologize. Hopefully all the Christmas cookies have been baked while we were talking and you don't have to worry about the cleanup or anything like that. I can't thank you enough, Andrew, for taking the time.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
And congratulations on a great career. And we look forward to the next chapter, whether it's BioSteel continued or whether we see you down the road on the ice at a rink.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
That is a journey right there. Andrew Hammond, winding through the hockey world. 2015, though, is the star on the map, Hutch.
Yeah, isn't it? What a run. Just a little context for some of the people who maybe weren't following along as well back in 2015. The Ottawa Senators in late January, I think they were about 13, it might have been 14 points out of the wild card spot in the playoffs. And you know that old adage, if you're not in the playoffs around U.S. Thanksgiving in November, the odds of making the playoffs are very, very slim. Not many people have done it. So 14 points out in late January is basically done and dusted. And Craig Anderson went down, I think it was with a hand injury. Robin Lehner shortly after went down with a concussion due to a collision. And so they had to turn to Andrew Hammond, an undrafted free agent out of college. So this isn't the young superstar that you're expecting to take the net someday. And his numbers in the American League were not earth-shattering by any stretch. And so, yeah, everybody sort of thought the season was over until Andrew Hammond went 21-2. So only one regulation loss in 23 games, a 1.79 goals against average and a 941 to drag the Ottawa Senators kicking and screaming into the playoffs. As Woody said, one of the greatest runs in NHL history to drag a team into the playoffs.
Do that over even a slightly larger sample size. And like what you probably get to, if you were able to do that over 45 games, we're talking about a Vezina trophy. Like those are like historic numbers over a 23 game sample for a guy that nobody really knew much about coming into it. And I'm glad you had those numbers, Hutch, because you're right. I assume everybody knows the Andrew Hammond story. Probably should have teased that up before the interview, but it really was a remarkable run. And as he just explained, there were some ups and there were some downs beyond that. But as I said, every time this guy got to the National Hockey League, like he posted good numbers, like really good numbers. So, was glad to see him get back towards the end. Disappointed for him in the ankle injury that ended it, but really appreciative of him spending the time to sort of walk us through that whole process. He's a pretty soft-spoken guy. He's actually from my hometown, sort of out in White Rock, South Surrey area. So, just a chance we talked about it for a few years about getting on the podcast. And I wish it was under different circumstances, but I was really happy we were able to make it happen.
I got to be honest. I was really interested in the McDonald's lifetime product card.
Were you disappointed to know that it's not being used?
A little bit.
Yeah. I was really excited about knowing the update or the recent status of that card. I know about the 2015 thing, but the McDonald's thing, that whets my appetite. I can say that because I'm old. I'm not training.
It's and also remember some just the epic masks that he had back then.
Yes,
from I think his painter was Sylvie, if I remember correctly, Sila Brush. So great mask, great play. He went with the theme, right? The theme was the college nickname, and after it became famous and all the McDonald's stuff, he leaned into it a little bit. So I love that, but he's not leaning into the McDonald's card, which may disappoint some people. It's funny because before I did the interview, I asked for some details from none other than Curtis Lazar, who is a young center. I think it might have been his first year in the NHL. And of course, he was the guy, after one of the games, fans were throwing McDonald's hamburgers on the ice after games. And Curtis Lazar actually picked one up and ate one on his way, or took a big bite out of one on his way off the ice to the locker room. And so obviously Lazar's now He's a guy we know from shooting up in Kelowna over the years and now with the Vancouver Canucks. So he shared some pretty good stories from his memories of that run as well.
I remember doing highlights back when that happened and spot shadowing Curtis Lazar after the team huddle, leaving the ice, him picking up the old hamburger and giving it a good chomp. What's happening over at the InGoalMag.com website as we get set to ring in 2023, Hutch?
I mean, pretty quiet over the holidays, to be honest, keeping up with all the gift subscriptions that are coming in, talking to people who want to know more about that in the process. So things have been just a little bit quiet over there. But as we teased in the beginning, the biggest and newest thing there is the Thatcher Demko. The first pro read is up. We will have the next one coming up at the beginning of the week. So if you want to dig into some of the best content around, check out InGoalMag.com this week.
Woody, do you wear your Apple Watch when you go out surfing?
I do actually. It actually has a tracker for surfing, for calorie tracking when you're out there. But I'm going to be perfectly honest, guys. Haven't surfed on this trip. Most of the time in the water has been spent snorkeling, maybe a little bit of body surfing at one of the beaches. But the waves are way down on my side of the island, and the other side of the island is, not for haoles. Let's put it that way. Not for pale white beginner / intermediate surfers. It's locals only. So where the waves are big enough to be worth the time, I am not good enough to be granted that time. So
tapping out.
And the tourist surf is it's only a couple feet here. So might go out one day and just cruise on a longboard, but for the most part, it's just been hanging with the kids. And I saw some octopus the other day. Went snorkeling. That was pretty cool. Always see sea turtles. You know what I love about this place? And not to rub it into anybody who hasn't been here, I apologize. But if you ever do, make sure you snorkel. Make sure you find a good snorkeling spot. Like, ask somebody that knows, because it is literally like going swimming in an aquarium. It's unbelievable. So I could do that all day, every day. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
I more asked you about the Apple Watch because if you run into a Sharky, I want to be able to find my watch and be able to locate you inside somebody's belly. I have a phobia about sharks, and I worry about you every time you get over there.
Yeah, so thanks for planting that image in my head. At least I'm down to my last 2 days of vacation here. I'm glad you didn't do that at the beginning, Darren, because it's actually a pretty good. Yeah. We've seen them. Let's put it that way. They're out there.
I think those iWatches are incredible now, so they probably detect the shark bite and will actually phone emergency services for you, Woody. So it's a good thing you have it on.
Yeah, there's let's just say that let's just say that it's not something I like to think about. Eh? Yeah, because you're planting seeds in my head. Let's just say I've had some close encounters out here and been close enough to be nervous. So maybe we'll just stick to the shoreline the rest of this trip after this conversation. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you.
Pool's looking good.
I know that you're not happy with me right now, but I'm pretty pleased with myself that I'm protecting my buddy.
Let's just hope you're not the guy that yelled shutout at the end of a game, eh?
I've done that before too, just to see the reaction on social media. I do, and that's my other side of me. That's a poker, a picker, a prodder. Thanks to Andrew Hammond. Thanks to Cam Matwip. Thanks to you for listening. Awesome episode to end 2022 with, and can't wait to go on this journey with our 200th episode that's coming up, and we have that great big interview. I'm not going to mention it just yet. Am I allowed to mention it?
No, I don't know.
I'm not going to do it just yet. We'll see you in 2023 on InGoal Radio, the podcast, brought to you by The Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, and Source for Sports, Langley.